Hi everybody, this is Valuable Grace, and this segment on my channel is called I Was One Way and Now I'm Different. So basically the inspiration for the title I Was One Way but Now I'm Different stems from a transformation, a transformative way. So I personally was completely different. It may seem hard to believe, but I was not the person who's sitting here today. I was not this confident, if I am coming across that way, girl. I would never ever think of opening up a YouTube channel for many people all over the country, possibly the world, even to see. I've never felt confident enough to articulate myself. I never thought that I had the skill to speak, in front of people. I was just extremely shut. I had a very, 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 very low self-esteem. So basically my background, I just want to give you an overview of my life. I don't want to share too much on this particular video because I want the content to keep coming, but I'm going to give you an overview of everything of my life thus far. 30 years has been quite the experience for me, so I'm just going to summarize it quickly, give you an overview of who I was, what I experienced and where I am today. But as the weeks and the months go by, I'm gonna have a topic, a weekly topic or a bi-weekly topic. I'm not really sure at this stage how it's gonna work, where I center the content or the video on that particular topic, whether it's related to my story or someone else's, but it will definitely be centered around a topic. For example, childhood or vices or habits, or passions, whatever it is, I'm going to center it around there and then dwell in detail on that particular topic. But for now, I'm just going to give you an overview of just who I am, where I come from, and just the motivation behind starting this channel. So Invaluable Grace, the name Invaluable Grace is actually from my blog. I created a blog early this year in April, and I was just so motivated to just share my story. And I love reading, right? I'm like obsessed obsessed with literature. I love fiction. I love telling stories in my head. I love creating stories. I love reading about other people's stories. It's always been a form of an escape for me. In the past, it was out of hand, if I can call it that. I know it sounds very bizarre. How can reading too much be a bad thing? But it got very, very bad for me at a point and at a stage, and I'll delve into that a little bit just now. But Invaluable Grace was, I felt, relevant because of my love for reading. What other way could I share my story but through writing, right? And for me, it was just this exciting thing, like, yes, I can finally do something I'm good at with this skill I've always had. I've always shied away from writing. It's so crazy. Reading, I can do. I could read like 10 books in a week, no lie. But to write, I always felt nervous. I didn't think I had the skill to write. But the blog really brought that out of me, and look at me. So please check it out. It's called Invaluable Grace, just like this channel, Invaluable Grace blog. And it was basically just a blog of my personal stories, my life, and just the thing that I've done, the stuff that I'm passionate about. There's not a lot of content there, but I'm just building it as I go. And then, of course, I had this wonderful idea to start a YouTube channel. And of course, I had to call it Invaluable Grace. I think it was fitting because the premise is the same. What I wrote on there and what I want to put on there is the same thing I want to replicate here and to just show and to visualize, so I just thought it was very fitting to have the same name just on two different platforms, for the reader and for the visualizer, so it gels very nicely. So that is where the name came from. Grace. So I am an devout believer. I am a Christian. I love my Jesus. I love my God. I love my Savior, because He is the reason why I'm sitting here today. I have always been, or I thought anyway, I was a Christian or a believer, and I believed, I went to church. My mom took me to church from a very, very young age. We grew up in the church, and we grew up with prayer in the house, and just, that kind of religious lifestyle was always embedded in how we grew up. But last year made me realize that I didn't truly know God until I truly knew Him. And it was a very personal, it was a very intimate, it was a very life-changing experience, and He changed my life. And that is the reason why I am able to stand here, sit here today and share all of this and want to encourage someone else, because what He did for me, I believe fully He can do for someone else, for anyone who's willing. It was the most difficult experience, but the most extraordinary experience, if I can articulate that way. It's so hard to describe. The only way to explain it to you is to show you me, I think people who knew the old me and see this person now, for them it can almost be like, okay, that can only be supernatural, because it's such a drastic change from the person that I used to be. And also in the space that it happened, it was such a short space of time that everything just changed for me, and it was just remarkable and extraordinary. So grace is what I'm founded on, as my foundation for everything. I just was so passionate and just so eager to share what I gained and what I was privileged enough to get. I did not deserve it. I don't deserve it. No one does. But grace is unmerited favor, and it is freely given to all. That is just basically what my life is founded on, just the unmerited favor of God every single day. And I still mess up very much daily, but just the notion of these graces new every day, and I get to restart my day, and I get to do things differently, and yesterday is white. It's like a new slate every day for all of us. There's no condemnation where Christ is concerned. He is a loving Savior and Creator and Maker, and I just want to bring that across as well, because so many people portray Him as a tyrant and this tyrannical deity who's just up in the heavens, and He's just punishing us, and He wants us to suffer, and that is not who He is. It's who we've made Him become through religious doctrines and just legality, and that's not God. That's not the God that I've seen and that I've experienced, and I just want to share that with you as well on this platform. I'm not taking you guys to church, please understand. This is just the best way I can do it. And yeah, so that is the name Invaluable Grace and the story behind its origin. I am the second born. It's me and my sister, and my mother. And I grew up in a broken home. My father was very abusive, and I didn't witness the abuse because I was very, very, very young. But the after effects of how he affected my home, and my mother and my sister was the one to witness it. I think I was like maybe a toddler, a year or two. So she got to witness most of the abuse. But just for me, the notion of rejection. So I feel like the effects were there. Even though I was not witness to the abuse and I wasn't physically abused myself, the domino effect of something like that affected my mind, and I grew up with a debilitating mental illness that was just so hard to shake, so hard to live through. It was quite literally hell, you know. I had daddy issues, you know, if I can call it that. I just had this constant reminder that I was rejected. My mother is, you guys, I know a lot of people say this about their mothers, but I've got a lot of people who can attest to this. She has the biggest heart of any human being I've ever known. And she's a mother, she's a nurturer, and she just is warm and loving, and she just loves everybody, whether you are her biological son or daughter or not. She is very embracing. We grew up having a lot of people in our homes. You know, my mother would adopt children, our cousins, you know, people who were a lot more misfortunate than we were, and she would bring them into our fold, and we had to grow up knowing that this person is our sibling because their life is not great, and this is what God wants us to do. We are to love, we are to embrace people, we are to share, we are to be generous, you know. And at the time, I felt that was shoved down our throats. I mean, already I had to deal with the fact that we didn't have a father. We were not very wealthy, not even mediocre, middle class. We had a very, very rough upbringing. We used to stay at people's houses because we didn't have a place to stay. My mother just tried her best to make a living, you know, and she took us everywhere. She wasn't the type of mother to just leave us, you know, with her mother or her grandmother or whatever the case is. Wherever she went, we were with her. You know, it didn't matter if it was in a shoebox apartment, she took us with her. And just to experience life like that was very humbling, you know. And I mean, me and my sister didn't know what wealth was, so it wasn't such a big deal at the time for us. But my mother wanted the best for us at all costs, and she made sure we got into good schools, you know, and we were privileged enough to go to private schools or semi-private schools through a job that God gave her at the time, that gave her bursaries for us to go to school. But we had the best education, you know, growing up, and we were very, very privileged in that regard. It was just such a struggle for me personally because I felt like I just wanted attention, and I just wanted to be loved, and everything surrounding me went against that. You know, my mother was just enveloped in loving, showing everybody love, you know, and my sister was the responsible older sister, and she felt that she had to carry, you know, the household, and she had to carry me, you know. She raised me a lot, if I can put it that way. Our mother raised us, yes, but my sister was just always there for me in terms of, you know, just growing up, the growing pains of growing up, you know, my homework, making sure that stuff was done. She just really was a big sister at a very, very young age, and she took on that role and responsibility with such grace and such maturity, you know, and I admire her every day. She's just remarkable. I'll have her come on here one day and you can see what I mean for yourself. So it was just very difficult because I was a very introverted person. I still am to a certain extent, but I didn't like to share or talk, you know, about what was ailing me. If I felt, you know, disappointed or sad or hurt or angry, I didn't talk about it. I just internalized it, and that mode allowed me to escape You know, I didn't want to deal with stuff, so I would just run from it. And the way that I ran was through reading. I remember my first books I got when I was 4 or 5 years old. I was very young. It was a family friend of ours owns a literature book and a literature store, sorry. And he gave me for my birthday Disney books, you know, but like kiddie books. Disney, I don't know, it was The Lion King, Aladdin, Jungle Book. And I was just obsessed with those books. It was the best gift I had ever gotten, and that was the first gift I think that I can recall ever getting actually. It was books, and from that point of view, I could not stop. For me, it was just this wonder of make-believe and how these characters can exist, and the happy ending and the fairy tales and the perfect love. You know, it was just so beautiful and unreal and otherworldly for me, and I was just drawn to that aspect because my reality was completely different to what I was reading, and I wanted to be in those books. I wanted to be those characters, and the best way to do that was to just immerse myself in reading and non-stop. So engrossed with reading, and I would do it so often that my skill for it developed very quickly. I started reading like novels, like adult novels at the age of like 7, 6. You know, I would like literally, I didn't want to read the picture books anymore. I wanted like novels, you know, and I was just, yeah, it became an escape for me. And over time, it wasn't as heavy, but instead of books, I created an alternative reality in my head, you know, because I was like, okay, I can live in make-believe. Life can be bearable, you know. I can create a different world that can help me endure the one that I'm living in right now. And that just basically became how I lived through life, because I was just so unhappy and hurt. I was a sad child, you know, and I would act out in very bad ways. You know, at school my mom would get called in all the time because I was just a naughty child, you know, disrupted class and just did a whole lot of stuff that was not really normal for a child at that age. And it was just really just a cry for attention and a cry for help. And I just remember just going through school and just being this problem child, you know. And it would make me so angry as well, because it felt like I didn't have control over it. I didn't want to be this constant person. And it was just for me like a reminder that this is probably why she brings in other children, because you are the headache. So it just was this constant reminder that I deserved to be rejected because I'm such a problem, you know, I'm a menace. And it just would fuel the fire, you know. Up hating my image. I thought I was just this fat, weird child with weird hair who would speak weirdly, and just I was just odd and strange, and people didn't get me or want to understand me, and I felt isolated. And I mean, comparing myself to my sister at the time, she was just this stellar student who was, a lot of people just gravitated towards her. She had so many friends and she was uber popular, you know, and she just had it together, you know. And naturally, I'm sure any younger sibling can attest to this. When you have a stellar older sister or siblings to compare to, you will always fall short, and you always feel like you fall short, whether people make you feel like that or not, you know. So it was very difficult to just live in her shadow, but it's so strange, and I still feel like it was only God, because even throughout feeling that way, I never hated her, you know. If anything, I admired her even more. I always wanted to be like her, you know. I always, you know, looked at her and I realized, like, wow, she's awesome, she's amazing, you know. That's what great sister and older sister looks like. So going through life like that was just one of many things that I had to deal with. And the best way that I got through it was by living in my head, and it was a pro and a con because I was able to coast, but at the same time it just made me even more sad because I wanted my reality to mirror the fantasy world, but it didn't, and that just made me even more frustrated and more angry because why can't my life look like this? Why can't I see myself like this? Why can't I be like this, and just living through all of that and having constant reminders. I mean, I got into so many altercations with people over the years who just validated all the stuff that I hated about myself and what they said, and how they treated me and what happened in the circumstances, and it just was like this big cesspool of self-misery. Like, I was completely and utterly self-absorbed with myself. I saw nothing and no one. I was consumed with hateful thoughts of myself. I just, like, no one needed to bash me. I could do it enough, and I was just a very closed off person, and I didn't like to engage, I just preferred to be alone and read. That was my safe space. Of course, in life, you need more than one vice, because those vices, in all honesty, are not what you need. Vices are temporary. Vices do not close the gaps, do not fulfill you, because you were created to be filled by something else. And every time you reach for something that isn't what can and will fill us, it leaves us even emptier than before. And you go out searching for something else to fill it. That's why you find people who are addicted to numerous things, because that one thing will never ever do it. So you're just trying to grab onto the next best thing, but it won't cut it, So even though reading played a very big role in helping me deal and go through life, it still wasn't enough to fill me, because nothing could until it did. So I then, growing up, it was school, primary school, high school, then I went to college, and I started hanging out with a crowd that I felt were cool, and I just wanted to be liked, because I felt like throughout this period of my life, I couldn't get liked, I wasn't liked, so maybe even I should assimilate in a way that will get me to be liked and noticed. And as is the norm, with pop culture and all of that stuff, you start hanging out with the wrong people, you start becoming like them. And I started going out, I started drinking, I started tasting liquor, and I even started smoking nicotine, and just partying and just living my best life. At the time, I thought it was anyway. And of course, for stuff like this, naturally, you do it long enough, you will get addicted to it. And I was an addicted nicotine smoker for 10 years. 10 years. I consumed alcohol like it was water. I would just drink, and not because I enjoyed it. I'm being very honest here. I actually hated smoking. I wanted every fiber of my being to quit, but it was very difficult for me to kick the habit. I mean, I think I tried quitting 3 times, and it just could not leave. So as much as I hated it, the addiction was stronger, and drinking was another thing on its own, And for me personally, I don't have an issue with people who drink, that is not my qualm. For me, it was just the access and how I did it, and the situations I allowed myself to be in from that point of view of being completely liberated. It was quite literally scary. Some of the stuff that I've done and I've seen, and I found myself in because of drunkenness, So for a very long period of time, I was roped up in that lifestyle, and I just became wild. And I felt and I hope that maybe this is the escape that I'm looking for and that I need. And it just took me down a deeper rabbit hole that I didn't even think or fathom I could, find myself into, And in the meantime, at home, my mother and my sister don't drink at all. They never had. So it was another thing, a reminder for me to be on some. There she is again, the black sheep in the family. Everyone is going this way and she's going a different direction completely. And I just felt like a mess, and that I didn't amount to much. I felt like a bum. But I couldn't shake it off because I just basically said there's no point anyway. And I just embraced this mindset and this lifestyle. And while doing this, I dipped. It became the worst dip of my entire life. And it's so funny because I feel like people don't actually understand that stuff, substances like that, nicotine and alcohol, mess with your mind, mess with your brain, And I think they resulted, or they added to an already broken mind, and they just made it worse, especially with the amount I was consuming. I would smoke maybe a pack of cigarettes, sometimes 2 a day, for 10 years. And alcohol, there was a point that I used to drink every day even, so that consumption definitely did play a part in messing with an already broken and fractured mind. And I just dipped so badly that I had a nervous breakdown. I was diagnosed with severe depression and anxiety, and I would have panic attacks. Like, it was the most scariest period of my life. I literally thought I was dying. It was just so bizarre how it would happen as well. Like, out of nowhere, I would just start sweating, and my heart would start beating. Like, I felt like my heart was coming out of my chest, and I would be shaking. It was quite literally the most frightening thing I ever experienced. I used to hate even going out in public. Like, I hated going to malls. I hated using any form of public transportation or walking. I just didn't want to be seen. I wanted to remain hidden, because I felt like everybody could see what a mess that I was, and then my body would betray me as well, because then here I am breaking out into sweats and shaking, and I was just a mess. Really quite literally a mess. And of course, you get to rock bottom. Eventually, all you want to do is end it. And there were numerous suicidal thoughts, quite literally closely attempted. One thing that I never forgot, throughout my childhood, even in the midst of like a very bad mindset and just at my lowest, I never forgot, and I believed it in my heart because my mom embedded this in our lives growing up, that there is a God, He is real, and He's our only source of life, and I always niggled. It was very faint at times, I won't lie, but there was something just always niggling in the back of my head. There's more to life than this. There's more to life than being miserable and hateful and depressed. Like, surely we can't all be alive to be this happy. What would be the point, And there was just a small spark of hope, but I couldn't identify what it was, where it was coming from. At that point, my belief was not very great. We maybe sometimes would go to church, but it wasn't very consistent. And we just carried on with life as normal. But it wasn't until last year after the lockdown that it all made sense to me. The niggling spark, the hope, even all the horrible stuff that I went through. Some of them I'll speak about in later videos in detail. But that moment for me finally made sense, and there's nothing I pray for more than anything than for any of you to get to that point in life. We all need to pray for a pivotal moment where we're like, that's why. Because there is a that's why for each and every one of us. That is the reason why you were born, that moment, and it changes everything. And wow, was it? It was not easy. Like, I felt like I was going mad. I really, really felt like I was going crazy, but eventually I just stopped. I stopped fighting it. I stopped trying to rationalize it. I stopped even trying to find ways to numb the pain and forget. And I was just like, I can't keep doing this anymore. And it wasn't from a place of resignation in terms of wanting to end it, but it was just from a point of view that I can't do it, someone else needs to, because I failed at it miserably and dismally all this time. So I'm giving it into whoever is out there, whatever is out there, and that decision in my heart changed everything. And it felt like I broke inside, it felt like that point in my life, me saying I can't do it, my surrender in that moment allowed God to come, because I told him that I can't do it. All this time I've been doing it in my own strength, and that's the beauty about God. He is not oppressive. He is not, forceful. He won't ever come where he's not wanted and where he's not called, and for me that's a beautiful thing, because I wouldn't want someone to love me out of obligation. I wouldn't want someone to devote themselves because I forced them to, or I compelled them to. I think love is more beautiful when it is done out of free will, and that's just the love of God. It's not heavy. It's not from chains. It's not in bondage. It's freedom, and that moment allowed him to show me and to reveal to me what love really, really looks like. And for him to take me, or a worthless somebody, and completely alter her point of view, her mindset, and just how she saw life completely changed. Like, I'm not even exaggerating here. I was one way and now I'm different. My life completely turned around. The way that I thought, the way that I saw and perceived life, my perception of life, who that I am, and that's 29 years, you guys, 29. And in an instant like that, it just becomes completely different. And for me, that's just what completely blew my mind, and that's why I couldn't keep quiet, and I just couldn't, sit down, because it was just so extraordinary, and I wanted to just share that with so many people, because it was just remarkable, and that is the premise of this channel. And I'm in no way saying I'm perfect, I am completely and, utterly void and free of all of the thoughts and the mindset that I have. They niggle now and again, I don't want to lie to you. I still battle with self-doubt and, self-image and low confidence, low self-esteem now and again. And it's not as bad as it was, number one, and I don't identify myself as that person. It's something else to go through something challenging or to experience certain, thoughts and doubts, and it's something completely different to embrace it and become it. And that's what I was. I became this person, and it just broke me. So we are not perfect beings. We are all imperfect. That's the beauty about who we are, and that's the beauty about what we carry, because in our imperfections, He makes us great. We become great, and we each have something valuable to give to each other. There is no one who is made the same way, and that's the beauty of it. I grew up wanting to look like this person and be like this person and talk like this person, but then I wouldn't be me, so what would have been the point of even creating me in the first place if I have a little bit of sugar and spice and everything nice? So I've really seen a different perception of life, of me, of how I view things, and it's just encouraged me so much and has compelled me to motivate and to share and to just make a difference and to encourage someone who went through or who is going through what I'm going through, and be the mouthpiece for that, in my imperfect way as well. So that's basically my life in a nutshell. But please stay tuned to more videos that will be uploaded weekly or bi-weekly. I'm not really sure, I haven't decided as yet. And it will be further stories of other people who have changed and whose lives have transformed remarkably because of the grace of God, and I just want to encourage you as well that even if you do not believe in a divine being, or you do not believe in God, do not discount your value. Do not discount what you possess. Whether you want to attach it to a spiritual entity or not, we are all valuable. We all have something to give. We all matter, and find that. It is so important. And in most cases, you always know what it is. We grow up knowing this. I mean, I grew up reading and loving literature and creating stuff, and I didn't know it will be channeled into my future endeavors. Often it starts from when you were a child. So whatever it is that you feel passionate about, or you're good at, or you love spending your time on, cultivate that. Make that motivates you, to become more. And you would be surprised what you can do with the skills that you were given. It really surprises me every day, and it is such a beautiful encouragement to know that you have value and you have purpose. It literally gets me out of bed, and I just hope that it does the same for you. So please tune in to Invaluable Grace. I was one way and now I'm different. Next story is going to be so remarkable, guys. You need to tune in. I'll see you next time. Thank you.